Anytime you're dealing with leads, they never come in one clean format. Some come through submission forms, others show up in screenshots or forwarded emails. The next thing you know, everything becomes messy. The data is either inconsistent, duplicated, or incomplete. So I built an automated lead processing system that extracts lead data from screenshots and form submissions, checks for duplicates, and stores everything in a clean format. Alright, let's start from scratch. The first thing that I want to do is turn screenshots into text based on the Google Sheet layout here. Think of this as the master sheet in which I collect all the leads. The first thing I need is an entry point. In this case, I'm using a webhook, already infused with data. And this is the kind of data you would receive if you upload a screenshot from a LinkedIn page, a text, or a business card. So what you see here is binary data. Computers don't see images the same way we do. That's why before we can extract anything from the screenshot, we need to convert the image into text. And that's where OCR comes to play. OCR stands for optical character recognition. And that's basically what we want. We turn an image into text. One website using OCR is OCR Space. So the next step is to send the binary data into OCR Space. That's where we need an HTTP request node. And because we are sending data, we're going to choose the post method. To fill out any missing information here, we go back to OCR Space, go to Free OCR API, and look for the information we need. The first thing we need is an API endpoint. So all we have to do is copy this one and paste it in here. The next step is setting some parameters. Therefore, I go back to OCR Space, go to the parameter table, and start with the API key. You get your free API key by clicking this link. And what's important to note is that the API key goes into the header. So back in n8n, we go to the header and fill out the fields. For your information, the API key is just like a password that OCR Space needs to identify who you are. Next, I'm going to fill out the body. Think of the body as the steps you would take manually in OCR Space when you upload a screenshot. There are two things you would do. First, you pick the file. Second, you choose settings for accuracy, like language or which OCR engine to use. The content type I'm choosing here is form data because it stores items such as files, text fields, and checkboxes. To set the next parameter, we need to know what type of content we are putting into OCR Space. That's why we go back to the parameter table and look at the second row. And in our case, we are uploading a file, a binary file, and all we have to do, or all we have to put into the value is the file name. The parameter type is a binary file, the name is a file, and the file name you can simply see by clicking on the binary point of view, which is file0. All right, the node is set and ready to be executed. That's the output that I wanted, and interesting for me here is the parsed text. Here you see the information which was written in the screenshot. So the email, the name, and the company. But right now this is just a block of text. I need labeled fields that are identical to the headers. First name, last name, email, and company. That's where the next node comes to play, the information extractor, which turns messy data into clean data. Now I drag and drop the parsed text into the text field. Then I'm going to choose a language model, in this case ChatGPT. I'm going to go with GPT-4o mini and execute the step. So what happened? We fed the extractor with information, and the extractor used the information to create a prompt with the help of ChatGPT, and the output that we got are labeled fields with matched values. The second entry point is a form submission. In this case, I'm going to use a webhook again, infused with mock data, and this time the data is already structured and labeled, as you can see here, first name, last name, email, and company. Now we have two entry points with structured output data, and now it's time to combine them into one so we can proceed with the duplicate check. We choose the merge node and leave the settings how they are and simply connect. So whatever entry point triggers the workflow first, the merge node takes this data for further process, as you can see now. The input data equals the output data. The duplication logic is pretty simple. Before I add a new lead into the Google Sheets, I want to make sure it doesn't already exist in the Google Sheets. Therefore, n8n needs to know what's inside the Google Sheets. That's why we're going to use the Google Sheets node. And I'm going to choose the operation get rows in sheet and connect it to this document. So now n8n knows what's inside Google Sheets. It created two items, the second row and the third row. Next comes the loop node, which basically goes through Google Sheet one row at a time. And that's why the batch size is 1, because n8n goes from one row to the next row to the next row. Now I'm going to replace the replace me node with an if node, because that's where the duplication check is done. I'm going to execute the loop node for the input node to get some input data. Then I'm going to set up the if node. So what I want to do here is compare the incoming lead from the screenshot with the lead which is already in my Google Sheet. So what I'm setting as condition is if the emails and the companies are identical, then this is a duplication. So if the email of the lead in my master sheet is equal to the email of the incoming lead, then we got a duplicate. If the company of the lead in my master sheet is equal to the company of the incoming lead, then we also got a duplicate. To put it simple, the combination of loop node and if node, they do the following. Let's say our new lead comes from a screenshot and n8n does the following. It starts at the second row and looks at the email and the company, then compares it to the new lead. When it's done, it goes to the second entry and looks at the email and the company and compares it to the new lead. Then the loop is done. Lastly, if the incoming lead is not a duplicate, I want to add it to the master sheet. So I choose the Google Sheet node and choose append row. All I have to do now is map the values accordingly. That's why I'm going to execute the if node. Then I'm going to choose the output from the merge and map accordingly. Let's test it. Now we should see a new entry in the Google Sheet. This is the screenshot my webhook received. If you compare it to this output, you can see small mistakes. It could be my writing style or that the tool is not good enough. One thing to note here is that OCR space is free. There are alternatives like Google Cloud Vision OCR or OpenAI Vision, but which are not entirely free. Alright, so far we have only executed each node individually. So let's execute this whole workflow with a small use case. So what I'm going to do is put the same screenshot into a drop zone area, and what should happen is nothing, because we got a duplicate. We already got this output here. So let's test it. We're going to switch to production URL and put the screenshot in here. Now we're going to check for the executions, and we see the workflow ran successfully. And as expected, nothing changed because it's a duplicate. If you want me to break down more parts of the workflow or extend the workflow to more inputs such as Slack or WhatsApp, or more validations such as form checks or information checks, then let me know in the comments. With that said, thanks for watching.